Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit.
Welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of June 19th, and I'm still Michael James up here in Chicago's 49th Ward. Our next guest is someone who's no stranger to the show. He's the one and only Rus Bradburd. He comes out of Amundsen High School, North Park College, went off to coach basketball at UTEP and New Mexico State. He is the author of a number of wonderful books, and he has just arrived in Chicago from Northern Ireland, where he's been working on a book about Gaelic football and immigrant kids. And we'll get to talk a little bit about that. But what I wanted to do was to get Rus to talk a little bit about Northern Ireland, the troubles of the past and the troubles of the present day. Good morning to you, Rus.
Hi, Michael. And I'd be remiss because of my friends from Von Steuben. I went to Von Steuben. But
I am so sorry. Hell, you got to edit that out.
Oh, it doesn't matter. But my career was undistinguished. It wouldn't matter. It's good to see you, Michael.
Well, we're both going off to El Paso tomorrow, and we're going to be at Basketball in the Barrio, which is a wonderful camp right near the Mexican-U.S. border. Kids 6 to 11 learn basketball skills, but a lot about border culture, including they learn a little bit about chess, etc. So we'll be seeing a lot of each other, Rus, but let's hit it on Northern Ireland. Tell us a little bit about the troubles, past and present.
Well, from approximately 1968 until the Good Friday Agreement in 1998, nationalists and loyalists, sometimes called Catholics and Protestants, were at a sort of a tit-for-tat retributive civil war, and claimed nearly 4,000 lives during the 30-year period. The nationalists would like to be part of the Republic of Ireland. Of course, Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom, and that had been set up by the Brits back in around 1921. Recently, so the troubles stopped mostly. The violence pretty much stopped. Belfast is now the safest city in the United Kingdom and one of the safest cities in all of Europe, after being the most violent major city in all of Europe. But recently, there's been an anti-immigrant push. And while Northern Ireland remains 97% white, there's been a strong pushback from the loyalist side. The loyalists are very anti-immigrant, and the nationalist side is generally pro-immigrant. And of course, these are vague generalizations, but I think pretty accurate.
Well, what's going on today is I think some unity between the two sides in opposing immigrants and immigration. There was a fellow from an African fellow who was legally in the United Kingdom and was able to go to Ireland, to Northern Ireland, and he was involved with the stabbing of someone, and that's turned into riots that have been going on for days.
Yeah, just to be clear, I'm only talking about Northern Ireland now, which is, again, not part of Ireland. And so in general, in general, the loyalist side is very anti-immigrant. And so what happened was these guys were neighbors and they knew each other, but a fight ensued. And it's a very graphic and ugly video. It looks like the initial reports were saying that the Sudanese man was trying to behead the Belfast local, which isn't what, he had a steak knife with no handle. So it was ugly and there was blood, a lot of blood, and the victim has lost an eye. But the perpetrator was from Sudan, but had gone from Paris to Dublin and then showed up in Northern Ireland claiming asylum. But it's not just like it is here, Michael. I imagine, I don't have the statistics, but immigrants aren't any more likely to commit crimes than the locals who have grown up here. And one of the things that's happened is this has all been painted as, look what the immigrants are doing. They tried to kill this guy. But it's an unusual case. The interesting part of the story, and slightly related to my book, is that a father was coming home from hurling practice with his boy. His boy was in hurling. Hurling is sort of like lacrosse, There's a stick that's sort of like a hockey stick that they use. And it's an ancient Irish game that goes very fast. It's supposed to be the fastest game in the world. Well, this father was coming home with his son, saw the assault taking place on the streets of Belfast, and ran over and whacked the assailant on the head with a hurley stick and stopped the attack. And but in the 2 or 3 days that followed, loyalists, many of them teenagers, were out marching, not really marching in the street, just tearing things up, burning things down, starting buses on fire. A $500,000 emissions-free bus got burned to the ground. And I had gone, I was there, of course, at the time before I came back for this basketball camp. I rode my bike twice. I rode my bike up to see, because I'd heard there's going to be a demonstration here and a demonstration there. But they're not demonstrations at all. In my mind, I don't know how you are, Michael, but in my mind, I think a demonstration means there's going to be a guest speaker and he's going to rally the crowd and they're going to chant together and maybe someone would sing a song. There's no demonstration. It's just the demonstration is we're going to burn things to the ground. And they've been pulling immigrants out of their homes and burning their homes down. It doesn't matter if you're Sudanese or Philippine or Romanian. The thugs are going to pull you out of the street and burn your home to the ground. So there's been quite a few people burned out of their home and now looking for a place to live. What's interesting about this is in the past, all of the violence was Catholic against Protestant, or a more accurate way to say it is nationalist against loyalists. But now the loyalists have turned their anger not to the Catholics, but to the immigrants.
Yeah, some of the reporting I saw said that there was that both Catholics and Protestants were involved, but I understand what you're saying.
I'm not sure what reporting you're seeing. That's not true at all.
Good. That's good to hear.
Yeah, that's not true. Now, 2 years ago, when there was a riot in Belfast, and there were people waving the tricolor flag, so the rumor got started. Look, the Irish don't want the immigrants here either, and there have been some anti-immigrant riots in the Republic, but it's a completely different issue because in Northern Ireland, although the loyalists are loyal supposedly to the British government, it's the British government that's setting the immigration policy. And some of this goes back to Brexit. If you'll remember, the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union. And part of the push behind leaving the European Union is we don't want all these new immigrants coming in. So what happened after Brexit, Michael, it's kind of funny if it wasn't so sad. What happened after Brexit passed, it became almost impossible to immigrate to the United Kingdom if you were within the European Union. So instead, they opened the door up to people of color. It was the Syrian war refugees, the Sudanese, and that's what the anti-immigrant push is for. The anti-immigrant push, they don't care about the Polish or the Swedes coming or the Ukrainians coming. They want the people of color out of there. And I think that's what scares people. And I think it's the same thing here. I mean, look we've made it so the only immigrants who are coming in are white people from South Africa. And when you see people, the ICE agents in Albany Park, where I grew up, when you see ICE agents there, they're not pulling the Polish workers out or the Irish workers out. They're also here often past their visa. It's always people of color, particularly Spanish-speaking people.
Well, it's, we have an anti-immigrant thrust in this country, certainly fanned by Trump. And in England and Great Britain, you have it by Nigel Farage and others. When I was visiting you in 2005, when you were coaching the Tralee Tigers, we were in Tralee, and I was really kind of impressed, a little bit surprised by the number of non-white people that I saw and the number of immigrants. And it really seemed kind of wonderful that people were being welcomed and, this was going on. But there seems to be some shift in certainly in Europe. I'm not sure about it, what's going on in Ireland and Northern Ireland. Clearly in Northern Ireland, there's an issue.
Yes, and Northern Ireland in particular. I wanted, for me, just for my limited expertise, I think I better stay in Northern Ireland. But I know that I've been going back and forth to Northern Ireland on and off since 2012. So I've lived over there now for nearly 4 years total. And I can tell you that Belfast looks very different now. There are people of color waiting at bus stops. There's women in hijabs pushing strollers with children in them, or they're driving. If you get an Uber driver, he's almost certainly going to be, he's almost certainly going to be an immigrant. So Northern Ireland, particularly Belfast, does look very different. It's still 97% white, but yet the difference is visible. For selfish reasons, boy, the restaurants are a lot better. It used to be pretty dull and, is sort of flavorless and sort of typical British food. Forgive me for saying so if there's any British food aficionados out there. But now there's Middle Eastern restaurants and Korean restaurants and African grocery stores. And so I think in general, it's been a good thing.
Talk a little bit about the work on your books, because the book is about immigrants and it's a positive. You've been on the show talking about it before. People can find it if they look up your name under the YouTube site. But what's your sense about things in general and how that book is coming along?
Yeah. So the premise of the book, no one knows this better than you do, Michael, is that sports is often at the forefront of racial and social progress. And, you can look at Jackie Robinson or Muhammad Ali or Megan Rapinoe, or Maya Moore, the WNBA player who quit to work to improve the criminal justice system. But in Northern Ireland, there's a strange phenomenon now where there's a push. There's children of color are playing Gaelic football and hurling, which are traditionally Catholic-dominated nationalist sports, and they're welcoming these children into this strange not strange, but unusual and unique subculture of Gaelic sports. And so Gaelic sports have been around for a long time, but they've always been associated with a pride in being Irish, not British. Whereas a British person might be more likely to play rugby or cricket or that kind of thing. But the Catholic kids often are playing Gaelic sports. And so it's happening now, but rather than it being Roberto Clemente, who, or Muhammad Ali, who are in their 20s and 30s when these are children. And what's happening is it's probably the same thing that maybe let's just pretend that your grandfather came from England or Scotland, Michael James, and he decided he stuck your father into Little League Baseball. He didn't grow up in Scotland playing Little League Baseball, but it was a way to assimilate and a way to be part of the community. And so that's what's happening now is the children of war refugees are now in a town that used to be extremely violent. If you would have said to someone, if you'd have said to someone 30 years ago, I'm fleeing this war, I'm going to move to Belfast, they would have said, no, don't move to Belfast. It's very violent there. Well, now Belfast is very safe. So it's ironic that war refugees are going there. And one of the things that I've found from working on this book is that the people welcoming the refugees who have left the war are invariably tied to the violence themselves. The people who have been affected by violence are much more likely to help someone else who's been affected by violence. And I think it's true all the way around. My wife says that rape hotlines and sexual abuse hotlines are completely populated by women who have been victims of sexual assault or rape. And that there is something about suffering that makes you more empathetic to, it's why I don't think, Elon Musk is against empathy, because there's nobody like Elon Musk, the richest man in the world. And by the way, Elon Musk was tweeting the places where the demonstrations in Belfast, which were really riots, but he was tweeting about where the riots were going to take place if you wanted to join in.
I had heard that Elon Musk not only was calling, letting people know where these demonstrations, so-called demonstrations, were being held, but also, posting a lot of anti-immigrant information on his site. He's a pretty terrible guy.
Yes, I mean, well, we could talk about Musk forever, I suppose, but so there is the Niall Farage's Reform Party in the UK is a fast-growing party, and there are people, and as you know, Michael, some people do have legitimate immigration concerns. Like I'm concerned if someone comes over and they're not paying into Social Security, and what's going to happen to them when they get older. And there's there's no question in America our immigration system is in need of there hasn't been a law passed in 35 years. But the funny part about Northern Ireland is the people opposed to the immigrants coming in are exactly the people who voted for who voted for Brexit to happen. What Brexit did, it was not what those people anticipated. It stopped European immigrants from coming, and there was a big increase in Syrian and Sudanese and Nigerian and that kind of thing.
What's your sense of Brexit? Is it going to, you've been living over there off and on for a number of years, and during this Brexit period, are people down on it? Has there been anything that's going to keep it going? Will it be reversed?
I don't know if they can reverse it, but I think if they did the vote again today, it would lose badly. I think it has not been, especially if you were anti-immigrant and you only wanted white people in the United Kingdom. Well, Brexit turned out to be a terrible mistake because immigrants of color came in mass after that. It actually increased, and so the intended. I think what those people intended to vote for is exactly the opposite of what they got, which is, I don't know if it's funny exactly, but it's ironic, I suppose. But there is getting to be quite the mood of. Last summer they were burning immigrants, mannequins, burning them in effigy. Was a boat of immigrants on top of a bonfire and things like that. So there is an ugly side, and I think one of the things that's happened is the loyalists, as the Catholics, as their lives improved after the Troubles have ended. The Protestants sort of take that personally, in the same way that I think sometimes working class Americans think, well, if an immigrant comes from Mexico, it's going to take my job, which is demonstrably false. But but if you're scared of people of color, I think for me, Michael, I think you're the same way. As for me, immigrants were always interesting. I don't want to live in an area that's all exactly the same. That seems boring to me. And I've always seen I think you're the same way. I see the world. I see the world through food. And if my cab driver happens to be from the Middle East, I always ask them, where do you go to eat Middle Eastern food? It's often I eat it at home, and they never do invite me over. But I think that I see the world through. I know about Jamaica because of Bob Marley, and I know about Nigeria because of Babatunde, and I know about I think that music and literature and food have always been a window into other cultures. But as I said before, and very well, is that oftentimes it's sports that's the window. I think there's all kinds of white kids around America that have Michael Jordan posters on their wall, and they'll have Jalen Brunson posters up soon. And in general, as kids, we don't say, I want a white guy on the wall. I don't want a black guy on the wall. That's something the kids learn as they get older.
Russ, tell us a little bit more briefly about how far along you are in this book. Are you still doing interviews? Are you writing? You got a publisher, an agent? What's going on with you? I know you've had. Well, it
is out with an agent. I haven't had an agent for a long time. When my gun violence book with the Chicago Review Press, that was completely unagented. But it is floating with an agent. But the problem is, I want the story to be over so I can finish. And then if a riot happens, or like a Syrian grocery store got burned out for the second time. Well, I've already written about the first time the Syrian grocery store got burned to the ground, but now they went back and burned it down again last week. And so now I can't ignore that because I'm still, here I am. So I would like to, I wish I was finished, but the agent is going to be shopping it around soon. And if I have to add an addendum or an epilogue or something like that, so be it.
We got just a couple minutes left. How about sharing with our listeners and our viewers just what basketball in the barrio is? I've been going down there for 20-some years. I actually, if people make a donation to this show, they get a copy of my book called En la Frontera, which is about the basketball camp, as well as El Paso and Juarez. But you've been doing this camp for a long time. It's gotten a lot of notoriety, a lot of kids over the years. A lot of people come back not only first as a camper, but they come back as a counselor. And then they have kids and they come. It's a wonderful scene. Just tell our viewers and listeners about it.
What we're up to, Mike, I include you in the organization, but what we're up to is it's for $1, we're letting kids from Segundo Barrio, which at one time was the poorest per capita neighborhood in America. It's now in the bottom 10, but it's an incredibly poor neighborhood, but also a very safe neighborhood and a very welcoming neighborhood. And for $1, the kids get a T-shirt, a basketball, 2 bilingual children's books, a harmonica, a chess set, and a poster. And so, but it's 6 to 10-year-old girls and boys, and we mix in pride and border culture. So there's folklorico dancers and norteño trios playing music, and storytellers, and we've got the firemen are coming back this year to demonstrate fire safety. So it's really an educational camp more than a basketball camp, but it's a way to keep it alive. There was a man named Rocky Galarza who trained kids for free in boxing for many years in El Paso, and when he died, we decided to stop charging. We were charging $20 before that, and when Rocky died in 1997, we decided we're going to lower the cost to $1 so everyone can afford it.
Well, it's a wonderful camp, and it's a wonderful example of what sports can do, along with a little bit of music and literature. And I'll be seeing you at 8:30 in the morning at the Segundo Barrio at the center where the camp takes place at the Armejo Center. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in person, Russ.
Great. I'll see you Friday morning. Have a good, strong cup of coffee, Michael. We need you.
I've had a couple. I'm getting ready.
No, not today.
Brother.
I mean on Friday. Okay. Bye-bye.
And some donuts and the stuff in the who knows what people show up with food. Sometimes there's tamales, and it's good food. Good food.
That's more part of the border culture than the donuts. I'll see you Friday.
All right, brother.